Right, we're just about ready to start our next game. It's Crash Team Racing. It's run by Natty. I'm just going to hand it over to you guys. If you could introduce yourself, and then we can start the countdown.
Yeah. So hi, my name's Natty. I'm in the C chart. I'm joined with Natty.
Natty, yeah. Wow, you actually remember my name. That's impressive. Yeah, I ran Mario Kart yesterday.
Yeah. So timing starts as soon as I gain control. So we're okay with. Yeah. So it'll just be after this load screen.
Yeah, give me a countdown if you could.
Well.
Okay.
Now. Okay, so this is Crash Team Racing for the PlayStation 1.
Welcome
I'll be
to
playing
the
on the PlayStation 2 because PlayStation 2s have a faster speed setting on them, so the game loads faster because the disc spins faster, which saves about a minute or so during the course of the run. And if you haven't seen this game before, basically it is a really great storyline where a group of marsupials are given the challenge of racing each other to find out who the best one in the world is, to then race against an alien to stop the entire world being enslaved and turned into a car park, which is quite a deep story, I'm sure. So I'll just cover sort of the basic stuff to start with. Character choice, I'm running as Coco. Each character has different stats, but they're in pairs. So there's two characters that have sort of the same stats as Coco. So Coco and Engine have the same stats. There's a fast character, which is Tiny and Dingo. And then there's a handling character, which is Pura and Polar. And then there's just an all-rounder, which is Crash and Cortex. But we choose the acceleration character, which is Coco or Engine, because they have a pretty decent speed stat. But the handling is good enough that we don't lose a lot of time in the later tracks. Because the problem is if we use the Dingo and Tiny, who would be faster on a track like this, where it's very straight lines, but the problem is because they handle so poorly, they actually lose a lot of time in the later tracks. So across the entire run, it's faster to use Coco or Engine. But there isn't any difference between Coco and Engine, it's just personal preference. We always give the excuse that Coco's symmetrical so you can do the corners properly, but I mean, who? Engine's like a mediocre character. So I'm running on the NTSC-U version of the game, which is the American version. You can also run on PAL if you have it. Luckily for a game like this, the two versions are not a million miles apart when it comes to differences for an entire run. So you can compete on PAL. The world record is on PAL actually. NTSC is slightly faster and it's easier, which is why I use it. But the main differences between, obviously, the frame rate is different, so I'm running at 30 FPS, whereas PAL would be at 25. But one of the big differences is that NTSC has high little jump heights. So every time I do a little hop, the speedometer will go up to 26 if it's on a straight surface, whereas PAL goes up to 23. So it's a little bit higher, and that actually makes a big difference with some shortcuts. So it makes a lot of things easier in NTSC. So basically you're going to see me doing a lot of these sort of driving sideways and doing little mini turbos. This game has a sort of a hidden counter, which we call the reserve system. So every time you do a boost, you add to your reserves, and then every single frame you lose reserves. So basically it's making sure that you're consistently doing boosts, which I'm not doing right now because I don't need to that, but consistently doing boosts throughout each course so that you keep your reserves. Because if you have reserves, then you keep the maximum amount of speed which you can get off these green turbo pads. So you can only get this full amount of speed if you drive over a turbo pad, and then you have to keep enough reserves so that you keep the speed from it. If you just drive over a turbo pad and you don't have any reserves, you'll get a boost and then it will immediately sort of run out. So a lot of the tracks is maintaining those reserves so that we can keep as much speed as we can. Unlike sort of games like Mario Kart, your mini turbos don't really give you speed as such, but they can help you take corners. So sometimes I'll do short mini turbos to take a corner tighter than others, but I want to make sure I fill that bar as full as possible for the most part, because the fuller the bar is, the more reserves I get for my mini turbo. So it's worth it to do full sets of 3 mini turbos than to do sort of shorter ones, which won't give me so many reserves, and I'll quickly run out. So another tech you'll see a lot in this track in particular, and the track before, we did see some of it, is when you go downhill, you get a lot of speed, and then the game will try and take that speed away from you once you sort of even out onto the flat surface. So here we're going to get a lot of speed. So to maintain that speed, we're going to start hopping. Now, a lot of new runners sort of get confused with the sort of hopping mechanic, but basically the idea is that you want to hop so that you minimize your contact with the track, because then the less you're on the track, the more speed you maintain from obviously doing your downhill speed. So a lot of tech in this game is getting more speed than you should have, and then trying to keep it as long as possible. Because obviously you want to go as fast as you can whenever you can get speed. So these tricks are a bit more consistent. So here we can see I've got a lot more speed. That hill can sometimes you sort of lose it there, but still it's worth keeping it even if you a little bit. You can also froggy up hills or hop up hills, which is a little bit faster. It's not a big time save, but some places it's just worth doing, because doing hops is sort of a free thing that you can do. But if you do it all the time, that means you're not doing the drifts. Because here, if I was to just drive in a straight line, then I'd be running out of reserves. So again, it's just that balance between where you can do drifts and get reserves, and then where you should just be driving in a straight line. So this is one of the tracks that I collect Wumpa fruit in. So when I go across one of those Wumpa crates, I can get anywhere between 5 and 8 Wumpa. It's random each time, but you can't get more than 8, you can't get less than 5. So you're guaranteed to get 10 Wumpa if you hit 2 crates, but you can't get 10 Wumpa from 1. And if I have 10 Wumpa, you can notice that I have the 10 at the top, and it's got the effect around it. So basically my items are powered up, which I don't really need to use in these runs. So we don't really worry about the items, but every single time you pick up Wumpa, you actually get a speed increase. It's very small. I think it's about 2% speed increase if you have 9 or 10 Wumpa. I don't think given 10 Wumpa gives you more speed than 9. I think that was sort of a recent discovery. But it's very rare that you end up with 9 Wumpa. So usually you just sort of go 2 crates and get 10. So you get a 2% speed increase, which is really good for longer tracks. So some tracks that we're not going to bother because it's just not worth it. But a track like I was just on with Mystery Caves, your laps are sort of, your first lap's 40 odd seconds, or 40 seconds, and your second and third laps are sort of 38, 37 second laps. So you want to get as much Wumpa because those laps are quite long. So here we're going to have this is the first intended, apart from Crash Cove, which is a little bit cut, but this is one of the bigger intended shortcuts, which is just a case of jumping up through a tunnel and then across a corner. And then we're going to do another speed ghost here. So the walls in Sewer Speedway are sort of coded funny in that they sort of act like hills. So I'll try and sort of talk about it when we get to the next one. But basically, when you sort of drive up a hill, or drive up the sides of these tunnels, you actually can jump off them or slide off them, and you get a lot of speed, which works the same as getting these speed ghosts from downhills. So you can get a little one off here, which I'll try and do. This one's not too important, but then this second one here. So this speed is completely, we're not technically supposed to have this speed. So as long as I'm hopping, those hills as well, it's sort of random if you can hop over them, because you can get a bad sort of config with your hops, and then you'll just hit the hill and you'll lose all your speed, so you'll get shot upwards. But yeah, there's a lot of speed you can get from those speed ghosts. The cycles in this track are sort of consistent, in the case that they are the same when I load the track for the first time, then they are different every time I restart inside the track. So got quite lucky on those cycles. I also had a bubble. Bubbles are one of the few items that are useful in this game because I can negate the damage from the obstacles. If I was to hit the obstacle, I'd pretty much just get flattened and lose all my speed, so it's an unfortunate thing to happen, but it's sort of 2 or 3 seconds that you can lose from that. So, as with this game, the sort of layout of the adventure mode that I'm doing, you do 4 races and then you race a boss, and that boss will pick a track from the 4 you've just done. So we're going to race Rue, and we're going to race him in his own track, which is Rue's Tubes. And I didn't really explain some of the tech on this track at this time, so I'll try and go over it here. This part, obviously, just trying to cut the corner as much as we can. Then we've got a big speed ghost here, so a big downhill. We're going to hop, and then... So that was quite a good one there. There's a little ditch, and you can get sort of stuck in the ditch and then jump out of it. And then that will give you an increased amount of speed on top of the speed that you've already gained from going down the downhill. So you can actually get a huge amount of speed just down there. But it's a very precise trick, so it's not something I expect to get all the time. But even if I don't get it, it's not a end of the world thing. That's a little bit of speed from that. Too much. Okay. Unfortunately, I didn't get speed, and because I was doing those hops, I jumped over the boost pad, which is really unfortunate as well. It's very difficult to sort of do your hops from the same place each time and then be able to hit the boost pads, because obviously you get varying speeds, so you can sort of jump over that one. I completely forgot this is a boss race, but basically all Rue does is drop TNTs behind him, and we haven't been behind him a single time during that track, so we don't need to worry. We do sort of catch him up at the end, which is why you can see those just exploding. But Rue's definitely one of the more tamer bosses, where it's very rare that he can actually affect your run. If you get really good laps, sort of, you know, amazing 1 in a million sort of laps, you can actually catch him up. Well, catch up his TNTs that are being blown up, because if there's too many items on the track, the first one that's placed will be blown up. So you're sort of catching up with items as he's placing them. The old ones are getting blown up. So you want to make sure that you're not near a TNT in case it does sort of blow up, and if you're near it, obviously you'll get hit. So that's the only time where you can lose time to Rue. So now we're just going to be going to Hub 2. There is sort of an open world to this game, but it's divided into 4 hubs, and you need to get keys to go to each hub. So every boss gives you a key, obviously, so now I've got 1 key, I can go to the second hub. So this is one of the, I guess, more popular tracks for losing time because of RNG. There's a shortcut on this track which I need an item which will shoot open a door, which then I can cut a corner, which saves about 2 seconds each run. So basically so that's an item I can use. So any item I can throw or shoot is good. So I'm going to shoot at this door, and then I get to go through this secret passage, which just cuts the corner. Saves me having to go all the way around. Again, good RNG. So I've already got the next item for lap 2 lined up. If I didn't have an item, I can just throw it on the track. Not too big of a deal. I can sort of just do a speed ghost and throw the but yeah, you won't really see me use items too much. I like to throw items if it's sort of an item I can just get rid of, but if I pick up a nitro, usually I won't drop them because they'll be in my way. I don't need items to beat the AI, because they are probably going to be lapped on this attempt. So the AI don't shoot me with items generally. Unlike sort of Mario Kart, there's no blue shell that they can use. So it's very rare that an AI will affect the run by sort of attacking with an item. So this is one of the few tracks where it's actually important to roll items, whereas I usually just throw them away just for my own button mashing between bits where I'm just drifting. So quite lucky on that one. I got 3 out of 3. You can lose 6 seconds on this track if you get bad RNG. If you sort of reach the point where 6 seconds is a reset, then you know you can have your runs pretty much die there if you're not prepared to carry on with that time loss, which is unfortunately out of your control. The only thing you can do is make sure you get 2 boxes each lap. So you only get 2 attempts to roll an item, apart from lap 1, where you only get 1 attempt. So now we're going to go to kind of another very basic track. So Cocoa Park's probably one of the most basic tracks in the game. It's just a very wide road, and still manages to be one of the most annoying tracks in the game. So there is going to be a grass cut coming up, just here. So I'm going to try and frog onto this grass, and then jump, and then get some speed from the downhill. That was actually okay. That could have gone a lot worse. So when you sort of come to the point where you need to jump over the grass there, you can get stuck on the grass and you lose your speed. So really what you want is to jump up the grass hill really quickly, and then you have a lot of speed to just jump over and then slide down the other side. So it's a really precise trick, but it's not sort of a run killer because it's... Okay, so that was a bit of a slower one, and that was to get stuck on the other side. But that will lose me sort of 1 or 2 seconds, so it's not the end of the world, it's just really annoying if you consistently keep missing that one. There's also a little speed ghost on this hill, so we'll put on there. And a little bit of speed, but sometimes it's not worth carrying it out, so we'll just go back to drifting. So let's see if we can get... I'm going to get at least once to see how fast it can be. Okay, that was actually pretty decent. So I got a good downhill coming off the grass. And then I managed to keep my speed. Obviously just cutting corners there, because the grass slows you down, but it doesn't slow you down enough that you sort of shouldn't drive on the grass in some places. If you drive on the grass too much, you'll slow down to the point where you pretty much lose your fire coming out the back. Because if you hit too much off-road, you'll go slow enough that the game will just think you're pretty much stationary. Well, not stationary, but you can't get you can't drift.
To get a turbo
and at that point, you can lose your reserves. So we try and cut corners where it's sensible to do so and not too much off-road. So now we have the first track with quite a substantial unintended shortcut. This is definitely a run killer for new runners. It's quite a difficult trick to get used to. Hopefully it shouldn't cause us too much problems. So we've got this spiral here. This is a big reason why Coco is a good character to pick, because you can take that spiral quite easily. So we've got grass cut here, got enough space so I can just cut that corner. So we've got an intended shortcut here where we jump off this pillar. We're going to jump over here. And then we're going to try and jump on this wall and then land right there. So basically, jumping on that wall is completely unintended, and you'll notice when I do land on it, the cart just bounces about a lot. Basically, that wall is not coded to be driven on, and the developers thought that it would be better that if you can drive on that wall, what they'll do is they'll just push the car back onto the track. So basically, I have to fight against the wall trying to push me back on the track, where I'm supposed to be, where I want to sort of keep on the wall and then just jump back in front of the finish line. It can be very risky to do how close you cut to the finish line. Obviously you want to cut as close as possible, but if you jump over the finish line, your lap doesn't count, so you have to do a little bit of a detour so that your lap will count. Just going to lose a little bit of time.
Oh, that's close.
That was a risky one. Sometimes I focus too much on the missiles or the things going on around me, and it can, because it's such a, you have to really keep on top of your position on there. So that I've been not been hit by missiles, but missiles have really put me off on that part before. So here we've got an extra Natty cutscene. Basically, this cutscene plays because we're in front of a boss garage. It is slower to avoid all the boss garages to avoid getting that cutscene, so we get it there so that we can cut that corner. Because when you get to the later hub, pretty much you have to take a big detour to get around, so it's not worth it at that point. So we've got quite a simple track. This is a nice break between Papu's Pyramids, and then we're going to be doing Papu's Pyramids again because obviously it's the boss race, so we have to do that trick, unfortunately 6 times. So this is a definitely welcome break. I'm really going to be like, oh yeah, this track's really easy and mess it up, but it is really easy. There's not too much going on. Obviously hopping up hills where we can. There's a bit of a tech here. I'm going to do a hop before I do a jump. I think the community calls that cresting. But basically you do a hop and then the second hop pushes you forward, so it gives you a bit of momentum. It's a little faster, like very marginally faster, but it's kind of one of those things where you might as well go for because you can't really fail it. So it's sort of, I know people get annoyed when you use the term free, but it is sort of something that you can just do for free. So as soon as you hit that, just do a hop there, push forward. There's also a cut here, so I try and get some speed off that downhill and then carry it across there. That off-road section it slows you down a lot, so we really have to make sure that we just hop across, because if obviously, the same as I was saying with the Speed Ghost, if you're hopping on off-road, you maintain the highest speed that you had before you went onto the off-road. So it works for that as well as keeping speed that you're not supposed to have. So very straightforward track that didn't mess up.
A bunch of the community, Rising Phoenix and Blitz Phoenix, are watching as well.
Yeah, Phoenix is one of my mods, and Blitz Phoenix is the guy who has world record, and he gets annoyed when I call out his world record quality, so I absolutely won't do that again.
Yikes.
So yeah, now we've got the second boss of the game, so we're going to be back to Papu's Pyramids. And this boss is a little bit annoying. Because of the shortcut that saves so much time, we will actually start catching up with him on lap 3. So I'll just put a potion on there. He always hits it. It doesn't really do anything, I just like putting them on there. So pretty much going to be the same for lap 1 and 2. Hopefully getting this shortcut consistently. Ooh, okay. That's a really annoying thing to happen, but basically you can get a really sort of wide angle, and then because you get a wide angle, then you take the corner really sharply. I can't justify my actions, I messed it up. So you can see on the timer that was a 32-second lap, so that's shortcut saves 7 seconds. So missing that is actually quite a big deal. But luckily it's sort of one of the ones where you can still keep going. So as you can see, there are sort to be potions on the track. So I got quite lucky there. I could have dodged it, but that looked pretty cool.
More style.
So sometimes you can have potions literally behind boxes, as if Papu is a human player and he's really annoying. So he will hide his potions from you. And sometimes you can't see where the potions are when you sort of land back on the track. So you can sometimes sort of have to land slower just to make sure that you don't immediately just land and get hit. If you get hit by a green potion, you'll get spun out, which isn't too bad. Because if you get hit by a red potion, you'll also get a random status effect. And one of those can slow you down. So as we haven't noticed the amazing jiggle physics on this. Papu he's a great model on these games.
So I wanted to ask, there's a mechanic in this game where if you hop as you go over a ramp, when you land you get a boost. I've
Yes.
noticed sometimes you go for it, sometimes you don't. Like how you kind of, because casually I aim to do like basically all of them.
Yeah, so basically if you go into the air, a lot of the time it's slower than just driving normally, so we avoid driving in the air too much because obviously you lose time. The landing boosts that we get are pretty much the same as doing mini turbos or going over boost pads. So they don't actually give us a speed boost, they just add to our reserves. So it's good to get some jumps, just because these ones, they'll just add to my reserves, but they're not actually going to give me any speed. So it's always worth just going to get something from them, but most of the time we try and get lower jumps where we can. So this is my least favourite track in the game, and this is where if your runs, once you've spent about 3 hours resetting on the first 4 tracks and then you get a run here, you're probably going to die on this track. So this fence skip, which mess it up. So basically what I'm doing there is I'm jumping onto the snow and I'm hoping that I land on the right group of pixels that I can then do a sort of a propulsion sort of jump over with a lot more height and speed, and then that will clear the fence. If I don't get any speed, then I just whack the fence, and hopefully we won't see that. It's not worth showing off. Ooh, that's an interesting missile. Okay, that's...
Wow, actually hit by a missile.
If anyone was eagle-eyed to see where that missile came from, that came from the person 2 positions in front of me. Physically, obviously they're all behind me.
Yes.
The AI will shoot missiles backwards because I'm the one in first place, and that's a very rare missile that made it across the. Ooh. Okay, that was a tech. Okay, I did a skip there. I didn't
Phoenix
click it.
says that apparently that track has a casualty rate of about 60% of your runs.
Yeah. A lot of my runs die there because it's 10 seconds is sort of not something you can carry on with in a game like this. So we didn't see that, but I guess we saw something a bit more interesting that I wouldn't mind happening in the marathon. I'd be really annoyed if that was an actual run and I'd done 3 out of 3 and got hit by a missile. But hey, that was pretty funny. So run Dragon Mine. So there's an intended shortcut here where you go through minecart. The minecart is classed as off-road. Minecart track, sorry, is off-road. So obviously I need to hop in there. If I drift too much again, I'll just slow down. So trying to maintain our speed. Speed goes here, so go as fast as we can. And then obviously that cut there, if you hit the wrong part of that bump, you can actually get picked up by Aku. By that I mean the game recognises that you're off the track, so it tries to put you back on the track, which is a bit annoying. So that can lose some time. You don't quite hit the right part of the water. The cycles are consistent in this track every time you reset, so I know that the carts are going to they should be on a good cycle here. So there it goes through. Don't have to worry about that one. I'd be fine this side. So the same minecart goes across that track, and that's usually the one that hits me. So as long as I don't make any costly mistakes, I know what cycles I've got, so that's usually quite an easy track to do. It's just when you do make a mistake, it's remembering, or just sort of looking at what cycle you've got. I didn't mention before about that when I paused. If you pause the exact frame that a trophy, well, some guy thinks it's a 1-frame trick, but no one's ever tested it, so usual speedrunners inflating our egos. But if you press start on the right frame also, the game pauses and then it skips Aku saying, "Congratulations, you won a trophy," and you can move instantly. It saves 1 or 2 seconds each time. I messed it up because I was concentrating on commentary and then I got it, and then I accidentally pressed up and then quit the game, so that would have been fun. So this is my second least favourite track of the game. They're both in the same hub, so we're going to turn around here, I'm going to drift into this wall, and then we're going to hopefully clear that one. So what I'm basically doing there is I'm driving forward and then doing what we call like sort of a U-turn. But if you hold square and just press a direction, you keep your momentum going the same direction, and then you can hop, and then you just pretty much just turn around on the spot. And then I'm driving into that hill, into the wall, and then I sort of just hold one shoulder button and mash the other one and say a quick prayer, and hopefully that I get enough height and distance to clear that gap. So it's just one of the points that NTSC is a lot easier because you get higher jumps, so this skip is easier on NTSC. So just again here, hopefully that's enough. I'm playing it a bit safer because if you get a good trajectory off the wall, you can pretty much cut a bit further forward on the track and land in the drift. But I think just for the sake of playing a bit safer on now, I'm just doing it directly onto the track and then recovering a bit slower. So this is definitely one of the bigger run killers as well for me. If a run survives out of Blizzard Bluff, it's usually Polar Pass that will ruin it. I think my PB actually has a mistake here, which is a bit of a shame, but I don't think one can go right without the other one going wrong. So.
Yeah, casually I found just jumping over the wall near the end hard enough, like never mind anything like this.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's at least as hard as it looks, probably harder.
Yeah. This wall jump actually is a lot more precise than it probably should be for a casual, well not casual, but an intended shortcut. Yeah. The intended shortcuts on this game are very precise. You have to jump very late for them, and that one's no exception. But look, I got 3 out of 3. This might be a marathon first, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you've got all the really hard tricks so far. You just got hit by a missile.
Yeah, so we're looking pretty good for pace, I think.
Yeah.
So now we've got a bit of a boring track on. It's a fun track to drive, but it's 1 minute a lap, and I think the closest track is 40 seconds, so it's at least 20 seconds longer laps, or at least 18, 17 seconds longer laps than all the other tracks in the game. So there is a shortcut here. which is very difficult and it's not really RTA viable. It's sort of so difficult to the point that I'm not sure if it's still the case, but for the longest time, the time trial world record only went for it 2 out of 3 times. So if you can't do it in like a 3-minute time trial, then I'm not doing it in a 50-minute speedrun.
Yes.
So a lot of this track is going to be hitting these hills and then getting height off them, but not going too well. Getting some height, but also getting proportions off them. So jumping forward. So I'm trying to keep the same lines each time. Get this one great because I missed the one. It's very easy to get 10 minute prophecy, really important for this track. You also see me doing shorter mini turbos quite a lot, just so that I can hit the corner. And here I'm just going to do a U-turn and then jump over that ramp. That ramp is really annoying because if you don't hit it with enough speed and don't hit the right part of the ramp, you don't get that nice jump that I just got. So that can be sort of a second or so lost just right at the end. But yeah, all of these sort of hills that I'm jumping off are all for a reason. So then I want to make sure I close this wall. Always jump off this one. And I get that downhill off that. Then this one I drift up this one and then I jump off that one.
Yeah, I can see that it's all very carefully routed
Yes.
for every hill.
But there's a lot to be said for the skill that it takes to perform this sort of as perfect as possible. And I sort of lose about a second each lap, so there's a second extra that I could be making up. And this lap hasn't been the best, I'm already a bit more time to save.
Just because about how smooth you land, how much you kind of nail the harder jumps.
But the thing is with the ramps and jumps in this game is that they all pretty much rely on you hitting the right pixels of the ramp and getting the right result you want. Because if you hit the wrong part, you just get sent up instead of being sent forward, and then it's sort of you're losing a little bit of time. As well as cornering as best as possible as well. So obviously in the kart race, the cornering is very important. There is one tricky thing with this track is there isn't a lot of turbo pads. You notice I haven't hit turbo pads since the beginning of the track. So if you hit a wall at any point, you have to do that section with no speed pretty much. Because the next turbo pad's here, which I don't need to hit because I already have full speed. And then that's it for the rest of the track, I think. So
Right, so if you're already at max speed, hitting a turbo pad actually doesn't give you any.
no, yeah, so it's better to just cut corners tighter than go for boost pads. But here, like, I've lost all my speed doing that corner, so I can use the speed from that boost pad to bring me back up. So it is a lot of time we will just skip the boost pads just because it's just not worth going for them.
Right.
Which I think is a big contrast with a lot of other sort of kart races where boost pads give you speed, whereas this they just give you reserves at the end of the day. So the first boost pad's really what matters, and then we just maintain that speed. So now we've got another boss race, which will be in Dragon Mines. Komodo Joe is another annoying boss when it comes to the items he drops, because Komodo Joe he will alternate between throwing TNTs up into the air that blow up when they land, or just dropping a nitro on the track. So because he has, oh that's not good. He got a star boost as well, so okay, he didn't drop. That one's annoying. That one I can't do a lot about, so I'm not sure what cycles I'm gonna get. So you can see he's dropping TNTs. Oh, are you kidding me? Oof.
Oh, that's cool.
I can't take the shot because I don't have speed. It's very rare that I get this far behind him.
It's a good kind of boss fight that can snowball a bit out of control, I guess, because you really want to be ahead of him so that he can't mess with you.
Okay.
Good job getting ahead.
So yeah, he's a bit annoying in the sense that if you're behind him, you can get hit by a lot of things. My original point was that I actually catch up with him, the things he drops lap 3. I guess we're probably not going to run into that one.
Yeah, you just need to worry about the minecart stuff.
Yes, because I don't know where they're going to be. That one was lucky that I could see it coming down. The minecart moves faster than my cart does, so I have to be really careful to make sure that I've got enough speed entering so that it doesn't sort of catch me up. Yeah, because Joe sort of alternates between things he drops and things that just blow up as soon as he uses them. There's a lot of things that just got left on the track because there's not as many items that he's throwing out, so they don't all get immediately blown up. So lots of stuff. Let me just find it this time, actually. You have to be careful with that finish line. If you jump over the finish line at the right angle, you will skip the lap and you have to do it all over again. You can't do anything about it. You have to do the whole lap again. And I have a very good memory when I was a few years ago and I sort of had a 58-minute time. My time now is a 51:07, and I beat the world record holder in a race because they had to restart this track 3 times. Yeah, they did it that many times that their time was about like 15 minutes above their PB or something silly. So now we're going to go into Hub 3. We have 3 keys. These are some of my favourite tracks in the game. They get a bit more complicated, the AI get a bit harder as well, which shouldn't be a problem, I would hope. We're also going to start bringing in some new mechanics. So, the first track we're going to go into is Engine Labs. This is definitely, I would say, the easiest track in Hub 4. It's a nice break from Hub 3 as well, because the hub I was just in has a lot of difficult tracks, so we get a nice break with this one. But this track introduces a new mechanic called Super Turbo Pads. So when we drive over a Super Turbo Pad, it gives us a huge amount of speed, and one's right here. And the idea is that you're supposed to jump over that gap with it, but what we're going to do instead is we're just going to drive over the ramp, but we're not going to jump off the ramp, so we don't get a landing boost. And that basically keeps the speed that the ramp gives us, and as long as we have reserves as we have now, so same mechanic as keeping the speed we have now, as long as we've got reserves, we can keep the speed. So we'll see it a bit clearer here. We're going to jump on that same ramp actually. So we have this insane amount of speed, and jump over that gap. So basically I have this speed as long as I either have reserves and I don't do another boost, so I can only keep it to here, then this ramp overrides it. So because we've got a lot of speed from propulsion, we can just sort of through that section. So again, the same here. The idea of these ramps is that you're supposed to get a lot of speed to clear like bigger gaps, but the gaps aren't big enough that we need to jump off the ramp, so we just keep the speed instead.
Yeah, you're going so fast and good enough at the game that you don't need to hop to get across.
Yeah, as long as you've sort of got a lot of speed, then actually I don't even think you can probably make that.
You probably it's
anyway.
probably actually just completely free.
Yeah.
Right.
But sort of newer runners might struggle with a track like this because it comes down to a lot of keeping your mini turbos that you're doing, making sure they're as full as possible, so that you get as many reserves to keep it to that first ramp. So if you're sort of a new runner, you might struggle to keep the speed because your reserves run out. So one thing I didn't touch about the NTSC and PAL differences is because NTSC runs at 30 frames a second as opposed to the 25 with PAL, your reserves actually run out at 30 frames a second as opposed to 25, so a track like this actually becomes a bit more difficult because your reserves are running out a little bit faster.
So NTSC is not strictly better, it's just generally better and easier.
Yeah, because it's easier on a lot of things, and the things it's more difficult on aren't difficult to begin with when you sort of get to a high level.
Yeah, like that wasn't like an extremely difficult track because of it.
Congratulations.
So now we're going to get into Cortex Castle, where you're going to have pretty much the same mechanic here as well. I think this is a bit more of an iconic track. I always feel like Cortex Castle is a bit more popular for people who remember the game anyway. But this is a track with the spiders in it. And this is probably one of the hardest tracks casually because the AI are very, very fast and their rubber banding is sort of broken because they take these corners effortlessly. So they just sort of bounce around the corners. So it's a very consistent track though. Pretty much just square corners everywhere. And we're going to make sure that we have enough reserves as possible. So I usually, in any other track, would skip that boost pad because it's very far out the way. But in order to make sure I've got enough reserves as possible, I'm going to go over them. I'm going to go over that one as well, which I could skip. And then, so there's an intended shortcut here, which I'm going to take. I'm just going to land on this Super Turbo Pad. So now we've got a USF full speed again. Oh no, I hit the wall. That's really annoying. Because you can cut in between the spider and that wall. But it's really precise. I blame the fact this TV's in 4x3 and I'm playing 16x9. But the good thing is when you sort of start the lap, you can reset your reserves. Sort of go back and do the same thing again. This is a lot more tighter than Engine Labs, which is why I have to detour for extra boosts. Because whereas Engine Labs I sort of don't really need to. So this one it definitely benefits me too. Especially on NTSC. If you're on PAL, you don't really need to go for either of those boost pads, so you can save a little bit of time. So hopefully, we can squeeze there, there we go. And then squeeze. So hopefully I can keep the speed to this first round. Oh, it didn't quite, it just ran out. Which is unfortunate. The annoying thing is when your reserves run out, that also means you don't have any reserves after the ramp. Because you want to bank on keeping your reserves all the way to that ramp and then just jumping off it and landing with a lot of reserves to carry on the lap. So because I ran out just on the lap, on the ramp, that was a bit risky. Don't need to worry about reserves lap 3 because I don't have to go so far with the USNF. Let me do 360 and hopefully it doesn't fail. It failed again. No, I've done it at UKSG twice, and I did it at this marathon. I failed it every single time. I even practiced it. So it was named the Pull 360 because he stole it off a YouTube video, and I think Pull's the only one who can perform it in a marathon. So
that's just a rule, I guess.
Yeah. So there's the pause strat in action there.
Right, so the way you're executing that is you're mashing pause and hoping you hit the output, yeah. Because the pause menu only comes up if you get it.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
If you mash pause, you can then unpause with the pause button, so it doesn't hurt to just mash and go for it. If you get it, you save like a... Oh, that is...
Those AI were cruel.
I think that might be a new one for me. I've never been shunted so far off the side that I actually... Okay, so this is going to be interesting, so I need to do a skip here. Okay, so I need to go backwards on myself. But the AI being in the position they were, I didn't know where they were going to go. So I'm going to jump down here, I'm going to just go down here. Okay, now we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So, basically this track, there's a couple of skips, another one here. If I perform them and then... Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm driving forward to load the track. And then, because how this game works with sort of similar to like a checkpoint system, is it works out how much of the track you've driven on, and then from that it works out how much of the track it can load for you to drive on. So basically by going down here, I'm loading more of the track so that I can drive on it, but then instead of carrying on, I'm just going to go back on myself, because then I can jump down here and this track, it will let me land down here without picking me up. So if I don't load that part of the track, basically when I jump down there, it will recognize me as being off-road, and I will get picked up by Aku, which isn't what we want, so I'm not really sure where to use this Aku. I don't really get them on this track, so I'm just going to use it. So this is one of the few items that gives you a speed boost, but you can only get this if you're not in first. So, okay, that ran out pretty much where I wanted it to run out. Because with having a lot of speed, it makes some things very difficult as well.
So Aku does speed as well. It doesn't just like actual reserves or anything.
He doesn't give you any boosts or anything. He just gives you pretty much just raw speed. Like I said, you can only get him if you're in second or worse. People might not remember from their childhoods, but this game has a very broken item system where it's not a case of if you're in second, third, you get certain items. If you're in third, fourth, fifth, whatever, you get different items. Pretty much if you're not in first, you can get any item in the game. So you can get a very powerful item in second, which can sometimes be used. So you can, if the AI get a head start, you can manipulate it to try and roll an Aku. But most of the time, you just sort of get the standard items. But once you're in first, you can only get items that don't really help you that much.
According to Blitz, they once got a Aku mask and Dragon Mines on an old PB when they were in first. So that may not necessarily be true.
Dragon Mines is what probably would have happened in Dragon Mines, because Blitz runs on PAL. Just we're just going to completely ignore that. I'm doing a shortcut to explain. On Dragon Mines, you actually... oh, that was an interesting drift. On Dragon Mines, because you have to take a different route than NTSC, you actually are in second when you pick up the Aku, and because you have to detour, which you're physically in first, but the position tracker says you're in second, so you don't get the Aku in first, it gives you the Aku because you're in second, technically, so it might look like you're in first, but it's not that one works. The position tracker is a little bit broken sometimes, but anyway, I'm going to explain what I just did. So basically, like Hot Air Skyway, there's a lot of loading the track and then driving on the track. So jump up here. I don't like that anymore. That's fine. So I land there, and I load that much of the track. So now I have to drive backwards on this part. So this is all backwards, and I'm going to jump up here and on this wall. Oh my god, I keep doing it marathons. I don't know what's going on. Getting worse at this track, more practice it. Okay. So I jump on that part of the track because that is now loaded. If I was to just do the shortcut without loading anything of the track, I would just get picked up there and it would put me back on the track I was originally on. And then that second little skip that I do, I jump down to the track below. That is more of an oversight by the devs. I don't think they realise that you can actually jump down there and it would be a legal thing to do. So that's a nice extra little thing. That's very easy to attempt, so a lot of new runners can go for that, whereas they might be put off by this one. Because you have to do a lot of precise movement with a go-kart, so... Oh, okay. That was alright, so...
Good enough.
Oh, I heard that one. I'll call us in second right now, so I've just overtaken them, despite losing about 20 seconds in this lap. I got out of this track already. So that should hopefully be fine. So yeah, that second shortcut, you pretty much just jump up the ramp and then just do a little U-turn in midair. I think I've explained U-turns. But basically, if you hold the down input while you're pressing a direction, it does a sharper turn than just pressing the single input. The game doesn't teach you that, it just tells you to turn sharply. And turning sharply for me is just holding a direction down. But if you hold the down arrow as well, you do a much sharper turn.
Oh, right. Actually, I thought that U-turning was braking and turning at the same time, but it's actually holding down.
Yes.
Is the key thing.
Yeah. If you brake and hold a direction, all you do is turn in place. And lose your speed.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
a really poorly explained mechanic that they put in. Pretty much a lot of the mechanics in this aren't really explained in depth. So now we've got our our fourth boss race, which will again be on Hot Air Skyway. Pinstripe is a unique boss in the sense that he doesn't drop items, instead he throws bombs backwards. So as long as we're not behind him at any point, we should be fine. So if I don't make any costly mistakes throughout this track, then I will be ahead of him at all times, and I won't have to worry about having to dodge his bombs. So hopefully that will be the case, because we can lap. Because of the shortcuts are so strong, we literally lap the bosses on these tracks.
Nice. So when you were doing the second cut, were you doing a U-turn in mid-air?
Yes, you can do U-turns in mid-air.
Yeah.
Because you can control your car in the air, which is really helpful. But basically here I just jump off, so I do a single U-turn and I do a second U-turn. So the single U-turn is to keep me stuck to the track above. If I go too far from that track, the game thinks I'm falling out of bounds, which is, I'm sure, perfectly sensible to think so. So I have to make sure I stick to the edge of the track so that I can I don't get picked up by Aku. And then I do a second U-turn. Once I've gone further enough, I can then U-turn and land underneath the track. So once you're sort of under the track, it still thinks you're on the track, so that's fine. But yeah, U-turn's a very useful thing. I use it here as well to do that corner. And then just U-turn then. I try and land on the base of that hill as well, which can give me a speed boost, which I did on that one, so I get a big speed boost.
I like that the first time you turn around, you do like a cut while going backwards. It's like you're doing shortcuts while also going backwards.
Yeah, yeah. That one's it looks really fancy, and it's a really annoying thing because if you sort of jump too late, you can actually just, the game doesn't give you a jump and you sort of fall. So it's a deceiving little cut that's a bit more difficult than probably saves the time, but
Yeah, it looks pretty risky.
so now we've got the last boss. We have to listen to Pinstripe. The fun thing about Pinstripe is, despite the fact that the entire world will be enslaved, he reckons he can save the world for a reasonable amount of money. So somehow he can avoid being enslaved if he lost the race or if he didn't get paid, but whatever. So now we've got Oxide, who's the final boss. And as you can expect, every boss has had a specific item they drop. Oxide just throws everything at you. It's consistent with which part of the track he's on, but he will throw any item at you. And he's also a cheater, so he gets to start before me. So off it goes. Now he has a config. He has a number of configs, and he got a fast one there, so that's good. Ooh. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I landed a bit too far forward there, so hopefully I can move off this side. Basically what happened there was I hit late. Anyway, so with Oxide's configs, basically at the start he can go really fast, or he can go really slow, or he can go somewhere in the middle. If he goes really fast, which he just did then, and it's good, he's out of the way, and I don't have to worry about him. If he goes slow, he actually blocks the path I take for the shortcut, so he can actually just completely stop me taking that shortcut, which is an absolute nightmare when you're on a really good pace run, because this track is not very fun when you've got a lot of nerves as well. But as well as Oxide, ooh, there's a potion there, he's just thrown on that part of the track. Yeah, Oxide throws a lot of items onto the track, and one of the worst ones he throws are potions. So lap 3 is a complete RNG cluster. You can feel where I'm going with that.
Yes.
Where basically there's a lot of potions on the track, and I need to try my best not to hit any, and also hope that none of them are blocking the shortcut. I'm very lucky that I have a bubble on this. I do try and roll for an item to use, so even if I get bad RNG, I should be able to salvage it. So these potions are here.
Oh god.
Okay. So, as that nitro is always somewhere down there as well, so you can hit that one. So basically, those potions can completely block you from taking the shortcut. If you don't have an item to plow through them, then pretty much that might just be a run over there on the last lap of the last track. So we're coming up on time actually, so as soon as I cross the finish line on this last lap. But yeah, once you sort of get past that second shortcut, this is like the home stretch. And if you know you're on PB pace, this is where you just get to flex and time. So
You came up with a time of 52:03. Blitz estimated 52:02.
yeah, once you get to that end section, you can sort of guess the time, so you get pretty close on that one.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Thank you. So now we get the Oxide cutscene, and that's it. Planet has been saved, and Oxide will go back to Gazmoxia, a complete loser.
Blitz has revised their estimate to 52:02.9x.
So yeah, that's CTR.
Yeah, it was a really good run. Nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Well done. Do you have any shout-outs or anyone you want to mention to?
Well, I guess I can at least shout out the Crash server. There is a single server for the main Crash games, as well as the Insane Trilogy, all the shovelware ones they put on PS2 and GameCube. So all of them are in a single server, so you can find it on the SRCom forums. And there's also a dedicated time trial Discord server, which if you're interested in time trialing on this game, then there's also a community for that. So yeah, pretty much just shout outs to them.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for coming along and running. Obviously, we'll now see you at Quickcade. That's been confirmed.
That's been confirmed.
So you'll be at Quickcade next. But what I think we'll do is we'll head to a break now. We'll get Zedo set up for his final run of Shadow of the Tomb Raider.